Okay. It's so amazing how music can just so powerfully move us, and we feel that divine presence. Speaking of music, do I have any country music fans in the room? Anybody like country music? Okay, I got a few here, okay. Well, I grew up in a small town, and that's all they listen to is country music, and so that's what I grew up listening to. And my favorite artist right now is Miranda Lambert. And she just came out with a new album, and so I'm like a child when I get a new album from her. I just want to listen to it over and over and over again, you know? And so there's this one song that really moved me. It really inspired me, and I could actually see myself standing here sharing it with you all. And the song was called Keeper of the Flame. Keeper of the Flame. And I just want to share a few of the lyrics with you really quickly. Don't worry, I will not sing it. Your ears are safe this morning with them. And she says, I'm walking in their footsteps. I'm singing their old songs. Somebody blazed this trail that I'm treading on. I am the keeper of the flame, the teller of the story. I am the keeper of the flame for the ones that came before me. And for those little pilot lights just waiting to ignite like fireflies in the rain, I am the keeper of the flame. And not only did this song remind me of my own passion and call to ministry, to serve in that lineage of truth sharers and wisdom keepers, but it reminded me that every single one of us is a keeper of a flame that burns within us, that motivates us to come alive, to truly live. And so this morning, I wanted to just explore with us, well, what does it mean to be a keeper of a flame, the teller of the story for the ones that came before us? And about this crazy thing that sometimes happens when our flame gets covered up, or it feels like it's been blown out, or like it's barely hanging on. And all along the while, how we can ignite those little pilot lights in the people in the world around us. So what does it mean to be a keeper of the flame? What is this flame? In Psalms, it says, I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart, and I will show forth all thy marvelous work. I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart, and I will show forth all thy marvelous work. And to me, this verse really speaks to that urge within us to share truth, to spread hope, to inspire others through our enthusiasm for life. Can you tell I like that word, enthusiasm? It actually comes from this Greek word enthusiasmos, which means divine inspiration or to be filled with God. I also did find this really strange meaning, which meant to be possessed by God, but I thought that was a little creepy, so we'll stick with divine inspiration. So to be a keeper of the flame, a teller of the story, to be filled with this divine inspiration means that we hold a flame of hope, of truth, of inspiration within us. And when we begin to share that with others, we're sharing courage, we're sharing wisdom that has been carried down and passed down since the beginning of time, as I understand it. And so I wanted to find us a practical example of what this flame could be like. So I looked to find what the oldest sacred text is. And I thought maybe it'd come from the Buddhists or the Hindus, but it ended up coming from 2500 before the Common Era, and it's that of the ancient Egyptians. They used to write wisdom sayings. They used to inscribe them on these tablets, not like our tablets, you know, the stone tablets. And one of these wisdom sayings, you will not believe this, oh my gosh. It says, translated into English, the kingdom of heaven is within you, and who shall ever know himself shall find it. Okay, this is cool, because this is a flame, and we have seen this clearly passed on into the Christian scriptures, right? Where, like in Luke, where it says that the kingdom of God is within us. But not only that, we see this flame carried on into us, When we come to centers like this in a philosophy called the Science of Mind philosophy, where Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder, in the Declaration of Principles, where it says what we believe, where he says, we believe that heaven is within us, and that we experience it to the degree that we become aware of it. And so we can see this flame, this lineage of truth, of wisdom that's being carried on since the beginning of time. And that's who we are right now. We are the keepers of that flame. And we can light those pilot lights in the people around us. And maybe this is part of who we are. You know, maybe we're storytellers. Maybe each one of us, as this individualized aspect of divine life, is able to kind of recall or retell a piece of wisdom, a piece of inspiration that's been passed down for eternity. Maybe each one of us is able to understand intuitively a different aspect of this grand story of life. And maybe that's ours to share with the world. Now, with all of this being said, and as absolutely true and certain as I know that it is, that there is a flame within each of us, sometimes a curious thing happens. Sometimes that flame gets covered up. Sometimes it feels like it's this dull little flicker barely hanging on. And it gets covered up for so many different reasons. But the one that I've been exploring lately comes from a book called Love Your Enemies. And it talks about the inner enemy. And this book is very insightful because it reminds us that at times we are our own worst enemy. That we can become our greatest critic or judge. And I don't know about you, but for me, it doesn't really feel good to think of myself as my own enemy. But, I wonder how many of us could look around at all the people in this room, the people sitting right next to us, and absolutely know that they're okay, that they are enough just the way they are. I bet it's safe to guess that almost every one of us could do that. Yeah? But how many of us could look at ourselves and have that same conviction, that same authority that I am enough, that I am okay, that I am whole? It can be harder sometimes. How often are we finding ourselves judging and criticizing and condemning ourselves instead of saying, I am a divine expression of life, and I am okay? I want to share this story that I heard with you recently. It comes from the Zen Buddhist philosophy. And it dated back somewhere between the 8th and the 12th century. And I think this story is a really great example of what it's like for someone to have their light be covered up. And then through support, be able to express it and to be able to become that keeper of the flame. And so there was a Zen master named Gudo, and he was the emperor's teacher in Japan. And so he was very well known, and he used to go around to the neighboring villages and share wisdom. And one day he got caught in a rainstorm, and he was just drenched, and his poor little straw sandals started to fall apart. And so there was this woman at a farmhouse way up in the distance, and she saw him and she saw what was going on, and she said, you can come over, you can spend the night at my house and stay out of the rain. And Gudo was so appreciative. He came in, and it's customary to say a sutra at their shrine, and so he did. And he met her children and her mother. And when she introduced them, everyone looked kind of sad. And so Gudo said, what's wrong? Why does your family look so sad? And she kind of lowered her head, and she was ashamed, and she said, my husband, he's a gambler and he's a drunk, and sometimes he stays out all night and he blows all our money, and when he wins, he drinks it all away, and when he loses, he borrows money from strangers, and I just don't know what to do. And Gudo thought about this for a moment, and he said, I want to help you, and I want to help him. So here's some money, go buy a gallon of wine and some good food, and then you can go to bed for the night, and I'll help you. And so she gets the food and the wine, and then she goes to bed, and Gudo begins to meditate at the shrine, at the family shrine. And somewhere around midnight, the man comes stumbling in drunk, and he's like, "Hey, wife, where's my food?" And Gudo stands up and he says, "Your wife was so kind as to let me spend the night and stay out of the rain that to repay you, I wanted to give you some wine and some food." And the man's like, "Okay." And so he drinks the wine and he eats the food, and then he passes out next to Gudo. And Gudo begins to sit and meditate next to this man, and he begins to see him cleared away of his suffering, cleared away of the attachments that have brought him to this point. And he meditates here next to the man all night long, and he sees his light. And the next morning, the man wakes up, and he doesn't remember anything because he was so drunk, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's really rude. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" And Gudo stands up and he says, I'm Gudo, I'm Zen master, I'm the emperor's teacher." And all of a sudden the man falls on the floor and he's begging for forgiveness. He says, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know who you were." And Gudo says, "It's okay, stand up, stand up." And so the man stands up and he looks the man in the eye, and the man could feel his energy, and he says, "You know what, Gudo, you know what, you're more than this." He says, "It's time. Your family's suffering, you're in pain. It's time to release yourself from it. It's okay." And something within this man began to break open and break free, and he could start to feel that flicker of light. And it was an instantaneous healing going on. And Gudo could see what was happening, and so he knew it was time. He was packing up his bags, and he'd be on his way now. And the man felt such gratitude for Gudo's awareness and his authority, his seeing him, that he said, "Can I carry your things a few ways for you?" And so Gudo's like, "Yeah, that's fine." So about 3 miles down the road, Gudo's like, "Okay, you can go home now. Thank you for helping me." And the man said, No, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. And so about 10 miles down the road, Gudo's like, "Okay, you can go home now." And the man says, he turns to Gudo and he says, "I'm going to follow you all the rest of my life." And so now coming to modern day, modern Zen teachers in Japan spring from the lineage of the successor of Gudo. His name was Munnan, the man who never turned back. And so I love this story because we can see how someone's light can be covered up, but through the support and encouragement of someone sharing theirs with them, it could be revealed, and not only revealed, but this man, Munnan, could become a keeper of the flame. And I also love this story because it reminded me of myself. When I was 23, my brother was taken by suicide. And I completely turned away from God. I completely turned away from support. I completely turned away from family. And just like the man in the story, I drank. And I drank and I drank and I drank until I began to crumble physically, spiritually, emotionally, because I felt that I needed to suffer. So I did. I could not reconcile this loving divine presence, this great good that I called God, with anything that fit into my life at that time. And this went on for a good solid 6 months. It felt like 6 years. It felt like the longest time in my life. But this is why I share this. The moment that I turned around physically, the moment I turned around symbolically to face life, to face the divine, to face support and community and God, it felt like the entire universe just consumed me with its love and consumed me with its good, and it said, "I am here for you, my girl." And it lit this flame inside of me that has never dulled since then. And it's this flame that is my ministry that says, I am to live my life as a devotion to the divine within humanity. That is mine to do. That is my flame. That is my purpose. That's for me to spread and to share. And so I share these examples of Munnan and Gudo and myself for every one of us who comes into places like this to be infused with inspiration, for every one of us who comes here to be rekindled with a flame of hope and faith and support, for every one of us who has ever felt like our light wasn't worthy of sharing. And I share these stories for every one of us who has ever said, well, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who we are incredibly powerful beings of love and forgiveness and redemption. Because we choose to have a new thought, to open up to a new possibility, to take another step forward, we become the living examples of the divine presence. We become the practical application of spirituality. Far too often, we're our own inner critic. Far too often, it is our own thoughts that get in our way. But it is time to let those things go. It is time. We are here by divine appointment, and we have divine permission to release ourselves from anything in the past that's holding our light back from sharing, from shining. And maybe we have done things that, sorry if it sounds funny. Sorry, guys. Maybe we have done things in the past that we look back on and we're not proud of. Maybe we have done things that we think, oh, why did I act that way? Why did I treat that person that way? But it's okay. We can let it go. We can release ourselves from the grip of that inner enemy, that inner critic, that person who tells us we're not enough, that we should just keep ourselves small. We are not small, ladies and gentlemen. We are big. We are bright. We can become on fire. When we are on fire, we lift up everyone else around us. And that's what matters, because we can't do spirituality alone. How much fun would it be to live this life all alone? It's not. We have to be infused with our own flame and share it. I want to remind each and every one of us that we are revealers of truth. Every single person is a revealer of truth. I don't care if you're the CEO of Google or if you're living on the streets. I don't care what your political status is, your socioeconomic status is. This? Sorry, guys. Oh. There we go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where we've been. It doesn't matter what we've been through. It doesn't matter who we were. All that matters is that right here and now, we are fostering the flame. We are fostering it. We are letting ourselves come alive. We are motivated from within, from that eternal light, that eternal story that says that I am enough. We can do this. We can do this. And when we do, when we are lit up, we set the whole world on fire. And so I just want to remind us, we are the keepers of the flame. We are the tellers of the story for the ones that came before us. And we can look at every other person as having that little pilot light that's just waiting for us to ignite it. And so I thank you all for enduring the sound and joining me in this beautiful morning together, and so it is.